Assalamu alaikum. My name is Peter Tschis. I'm here to talk to you, I'm not sure for how long, because I know you have buses to catch, you have places to sleep, but it is a real honor to be able to address you this afternoon at the Federal Youth Authority's Congress. I think it's wonderful to see all you young people here from the United Arab Emirates studying in the United Kingdom. First of all, just to introduce a little bit about myself, I am the chief executive of an organization called the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. That is the professional body for HR, so for human resource management, people management, and learning. We have offices in London, in Dublin, in Dubai, and in Singapore, and we've been established for almost 100 years. In Dubai, we've had an office for about 6 years now, and I'm very excited to be able to tell you today that we just signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry for HR and Emiratization to help to develop and professionalize human resource management within the Emirates. We are also doing work in Saudi and in Oman and many other parts of the Gulf region, because of course many of the issues across the Gulf region are similar. The nationalization agendas, creating good workplaces that are supportive of everybody. But I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the future of work. What are some of the things which are driving the future of work? We live in very interesting times. I think it's fair to say that, yes? There are many different changes or forces which are driving thinking about the future of work. You may be somewhat familiar with the model, the PEST model, so political change, economic change, social change, and technological change. Where you are today from political change in the United Kingdom, I'm sure you hear a lot about Brexit, yes? About what is going to happen with the United Kingdom and what is going to happen with Europe. What is the future of Europe? Because for many years we've been in a world where we've been looking more and more at globalization, about common connection, about the breakdown of borders and free movement of goods and services and labor. But over the last 5 or 6 years, the dialogue seems to be changing. The dialogue about Brexit in the United Kingdom is not unique to the United Kingdom. The same sort of dialogue led to President Trump entering the White House. It was a lot about issues of, do we trust the political establishment anymore? Where is my voice? What is the future for me if I can see many other people coming into my country, maybe taking my jobs? Those kinds of ideas. So Brexit is part of a changing political dialogue in many parts of the world. And we don't know where it'll all end up. I've worked all around the world myself in my own professional career. I believed for many years that the world was opening up, opportunities everywhere, free movement of labor. But it seems that we're going through a time when some of those things may be changing. Economic change also. Now, across the Gulf regions, generally speaking, the economy is growing, but in many other parts of the world, the economy is much more uncertain. Certainly in Europe today, it is very uncertain about how much economic growth we will see in the next few years, and what is happening to an older generation, an aging workforce. So economic uncertainty as well. Social change and technological change, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Different generations coming into work and thinking differently. And then, of course, technological change, which is so important. What is technology doing to our jobs? What will the future look like? Now, I've been in business quite a long time, and I have never seen more discussion or more debate about what will the future be, what jobs will we be all doing. And there are many ways of talking about this. People talk now about the fourth industrial revolution. Have you heard that expression? So that we're entering the fourth industrial revolution, which is really about the growth of things like artificial intelligence and machine learning and robotics, and how much that will impact everybody in the terms of how we learn, how we communicate, how we connect, but also, of course, the jobs that we have and the skills that we're going to need. There are many surveys that suggest that jobs are changing faster than any other point in time, that many of the jobs that young people will do in the future have not even been invented. Many jobs may change or even disappear. If you look at sectors like retail, retail is a very important sector, employs many people. In this country, the Association for the Retail Industry said a number of years ago that they expected as many as 1 in 3 jobs in retail could disappear in the next 10 to 15 years because of more automation, because people are shopping online. You can see if you're reading the headlines in this country and many others now that retail is finding life very difficult. It's a very disrupted industry. But of course, there are many other industries like that. There are many jobs today that technology potentially could do better than human beings. The more analytical or cognitive the job is, the more potentially it can be changed and impacted by artificial intelligence. People look at jobs like accountancy and law and saying those are jobs that increasingly can be done with technology. If you take law, if you can put all of the law, all the statute, all the case histories and so forth, case studies onto a computer, then potentially you can do a lot of what junior solicitors used to do. You can ask the question, the legal question, and the computer will give you the answer. Here's precedents and here's statute to give the more senior solicitor or lawyer the opportunity to make the judgment. So this is a profound change from technology that we've had in the past. Technology that we've had in the past has been a lot about efficiency and processes and things like that. The technology of the future is a lot about learning and new jobs and new capabilities, and it's accelerating at a great speed. The ways in which people work also is changing. There are many, many surveys around the world now where people are saying, you know what, I would rather work for myself. I'd like to be a contractor. I don't have to work for an organization. The growth of something called the gig economy, which means I can sell my services to almost anybody around the world just for a piece of work, and I'll get paid just for that piece of work. Uber, of course, is a very good example of that. Uber now is the biggest taxi company in the world, just like Airbnb is the biggest hospitality business in the world, and neither of them own any assets. Airbnb owns no hotels. So this technology is enabling people to connect in a lot of different ways and to share their skills and share their expertise. And many businesses now are looking at these models and saying, I cannot access all the skills I need, so I can get skills this way too. If you ask most businesses here and certainly in the Gulf region and all around the world, where are your biggest skills shortages, they will say things like technology skills. Well, I can then acquire potentially technology skills via the internet. I can post out tasks onto the internet and get people to respond and do those things for me. I don't need to employ them in the same way. It's what's known as the human cloud. So these are very profound shifts in the ways we work, and there are a lot of projections that many more people in the future will work in these ways as opposed to necessarily working in organizations and have formal employment models that we've had in the past. Data. Data is the new oil. Data is about us. How many of you are on Facebook or Instagram? Right? What is the key asset that Facebook has? The key asset that Facebook has is data about you, about me. And how are they using that information? Well, they're using that information to sell us things. How many of you have machines like Alexa? You have listening machines, listening technology at home. Do you ever worry that it's listening to you all the time? Because it is listening to you all the time. And increasingly, and indeed your phone listens to you all the time. You notice when you talk about something, you leave your phone on the desk, you talk about something, you pick it up, chances are you've got an advertisement about what you just talked about. Facebook is listening all the time. What does all this mean? Well, I think there are many, many questions which are emerging now about the ethics, about what that information is being used for. Is it manipulating our thinking? Is it influencing how we vote? Is it influencing how we think? Because if I'm in a world where I take all my news and all my information from, say, Facebook, and then everything I keep searching for, Facebook gives me more of the same. If I like this, you'll like that. That increasingly is influencing our thinking, which is why companies like Facebook are being challenged more and more by governments to be more transparent. And it'll be your generation that will have to really deal with these questions for the future. I'm lucky I did not grow up in a world where my entire youth was played out on social media. So when I go for a job and a future employer looks for my online profile, they'll see my online profile, which all looks very professional and me giving speeches or something. They look at your online profiles, they may see something very, very different. So data is really, really important to us all. It is the key asset of the future. It is something which we need to understand and we've got to manage better, because we are living in a world of alternative facts and post-truth and all these sorts of ideas. So data is something we have to understand and worry about. What about demographics? What is different about the Gulf region from Europe and from the United States and many other countries in the world is you have a very different demographic. You have a far younger population. 6 in 10 in the United Arab Emirates is under the age of 29. You know, in Europe we have an aging population. Why do we have an aging population? Well, it's quite simple. It's called biology. We are not having enough babies. And we haven't been having enough babies for a long time. The average birth rate in Europe is only 1.6 children per adult female. You need more than 2 to keep the population growing. The reason that the population of countries like the United Kingdom is growing is because of immigration. And it is important because we need access to young people. We need access to skills. Countries without access to a younger population will increasingly be looking to attract young people from other parts of the world, because you will have the skills of the future. Japan is the oldest country in the world. Its population is in its late 40s on average, and it's the first developed country in the world to see its population starting to decline. The problems that's giving them is many things, not least of how do we look after all these older people if I haven't got enough young people to be social care workers and nurses? What's the solution to that? Technology. They're using technology more and more in people's homes, particularly older people's homes, to help support older people. And those people are building relationships with technology. Some people have said technology can't be like a human being. You can't build a relationship with technology. I'd say you absolutely can. How many of you have got a name for your car? There you go, right? Your car is an inanimate object, but you still give it a name and you talk to it like it's a person. How many of you got Alexa and you talk to Alexa all the time and you're having a conversation with Alexa, right? I've heard parents talk about things like they listen to their children. So they might have a 9 or 10-year-old child, and they'll hear that child talking to Alexa, saying things like, "Alexa, I'm bored. What should I do?" That's outsourcing our entertainment, right? But in countries like Japan, they're using technology now because they have to help them deal with the demographics of society, the aging populations. This will be one of your greatest advantages in the future, is because you have a young population and that population is well educated. You're all here learning, studying at British universities. This will give you huge advantage in the future world where, as I say, in the older economies of the world, we don't have enough young people. What about other things? Therefore, social change is also about generational change. We've studied for many years the differences between how young people think versus older people think. I've talked to young people all around the world, from Australia through Japan and Korea, all over Asia, China, Latin America, the United States, and Europe. Many of the attitudes of young people, particularly the so-called Generation Y, are fairly consistent around the world. This generation, your generation, has come into the world and come into the workplace and asked many questions about what we do and why we do it. Generation Y is often talked about as Generation WHY. Generation Y, why do I have to do this? Why do you do that? What is the purpose of your organization? Why can't I have your job? Right? My generation didn't work like that. My generation tended to work in the world where it said, if that's what I have to do, then that's what I'm going to do. We didn't challenge it so much. Now, in my view, the fact that the younger generations are challenging business more is a very, very good thing. because business needs to change. We've got to create more human-centered businesses. We've got to help people understand what is the purpose of their job and why we do the things we do. We've got to change corporate cultures. We've got to challenge society more. And the fact is that your generation coming in and asking these questions is a very good thing. It's a very, very powerful thing. But we do have differences. Now we've got the new generation coming in, up to about age 20, Generation Z, the true digital natives. I've got 3 daughters, 2 Gen Y and 1 Gen Z. My older daughter thinks there's something wrong with my younger daughter because she can't let go of technology. She'll have her phone, her iPad, she'll be watching Netflix, all happening at once, right? Can't put her phone down. You've heard of the expression FOMO. You know what that means? FOMO, F-O-M-O, fear of missing out. But there's another one that's emerged called FOBO, F-O-B-O, fear of being offline. For my generation, FOBO means something else. FOBO, F-O-B-O, means fear of becoming obsolete. Because the world is changing around us and we can't upskill enough or reskill enough fast enough. So these generational shifts have caused a lot of businesses and societies and regulators and governments to think differently. And it is a very good thing we are. I passionately believe that the future of work is human. The future of work is about creating great organizations and great jobs and great societies that are good for people. Many people have talked about technology. Professor Stephen Hawking, the great physicist who recently died, said artificial intelligence could be the greatest threat that mankind has yet invented. We know that artificial intelligence can already do things that we can't. New computing power is so clever with things like machine learning that now, do you remember when the first time that a computer beat a human being at chess? That was in the 1990s. Then we had Google's DeepMind beating the world champion at Go, which is a much more complex game. How the computer beat the world champion in 1990 was because they programmed the computer with every single game that ever been played, and then it could sort through all of these things and decide what to do. Today, how you program a computer to play chess is you just tell it the rules. You tell it the rules of chess, and then it learns how to play chess. IBM's Deep Blue has beaten modern grand chess masters by learning itself how to play chess. And it comes up with completely different strategies than any humans come up with before, and then beats humans at their own game. So it's very, very important that we understand that the future must be about understanding people and making sure that people are working well with technology. And then we're creating good workplaces. Now, what does good workplaces mean? What are the important things to us as people when we come into a job and a workplace? It's all these things. Do I have a voice? Is anybody listening? Can I influence things? Or am I just being told what to do? And these are all the rules. Am I being recognized? Is there purpose in the job that I have? And these are questions which have not been asked well enough in the past. What is the purpose of the organization? What is the purpose of my job? And how can I connect those two things? There's a very good illustration of that idea, which was back in the 1960s, and you may have heard this story, but back in the 1960s, John F. Kennedy was doing a tour of the NASA facilities at the time of the Apollo moon landings. And he came across somebody who was sweeping the floor, so a very low-skilled, low-paid job. And he said to that person, "What is your job?" And that person answered, "My job is to help to put a man on the moon." Now that is an illustration of purpose. That person understood, even though their job was a very low-skilled job, they could see the connection to a much bigger idea. Now we know from behavioral science research over many, many decades that the things that motivate and engage us as people, as human beings, in work, and which make work good for us, are 3 broad ideas. And it's written in a book by a guy called Dan Pink called Drive, or the Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. Those 3 things are, first and foremost, is purpose. Do I understand what the purpose of the organization is? Is it a good purpose? Is it a purpose which is helping helping people and helping society, or is it just about enriching themselves? So have I got a good purpose, and do I understand the purpose of my job as it connects to that? Secondly, is the idea of autonomy. Don't put me in a box with a lot of rules. Give me some space. Help me to be creative. Help me to have a voice and influence things. I don't want to be put in a little box. And yet, if you look at the history of work in so many environments, that's what we've done. We said the best way to control people is to put them in a little box and give them a lot of rules about how to behave. That is not getting the best out of our people, and it is not engaging them, and it is not driving creativity and innovation. But it is a paradigm of work that we've had for a very long time, that the right way to manage people is to give them lots of rules. So purpose, autonomy, and then the third one that matters to everybody is what has been called mastery. In other words, the idea that I want to improve. I want to get better at what I'm doing. It's a very human thing. I don't want to do a job badly. But then when I come into the workplace, I want to know that my line manager is helping me to improve, is coaching me and supporting me, and knowing that I've got access to learning and the support of resources that I need to do my job well. Because there's nothing more frustrating for people saying, you're asking me to do a job, I can't do it well, my manager's not listening, and I haven't got the support or the technology or the tools that I need to do it well. So these are the very human aspects of work. It's what it means to be human at work. And we know how important that is around the world. We know how important these things are in driving a good value proposition for people to work in an organization. And when we look at the Emiratization agendas, all of the nationalization agendas across the Gulf region, these things are the things we have to put at the heart of business thinking. If we want to attract and retain young Emiratis into businesses anywhere, but particularly in the Gulf region, then we have to create more human-centered organizations. Give them voice, support them, give them opportunities, show them progression, show them purpose. And it doesn't matter what technology we have, we must make sure that we're designing jobs that are good for people and not just creating jobs that I might as well be a robot. If you look at jobs in automated warehouses, for example, just look at the YouTube videos, or some of you may have been into automated warehouses. And what do you see? You see a person operating according to a piece of technology telling them to pick something out of one, a range of products and put it in perhaps to a driverless vehicle that's going past them. And the next person's 50 meters away. Now that's technology in action, which is very smart technology, but what it's also done is create a really bad job for a human being. And we cannot create workplaces like that and expect people to stay in those jobs, that those jobs will be good for people. Because I have an aspiration for you young people that you will have purposeful jobs and purposeful working lives. And I'll give you an illustration of why this is so important. We're doing work with a centre in the United Kingdom called the Centre for Aging Better. It's a research establishment. And they went out and they researched a lot of older people who had recently retired. They were in their 60s, they'd retired from work. And they asked them, what in your job or your work do you most miss now that you're retired? Now, of course, if I asked you that question, you'd probably tell me things like, well, the things I would most miss from work would be things like social contact, or maybe the routine of work. Would you agree? Would those things be important? Well, I asked this question of all these retired people, and the number one answer they gave was absolutely nothing at all. They said they would miss nothing at all from work. And yet we spend so much time in our lives working. How can we be in a situation where all these people finish working and they're sort of saying, oh, well, thank goodness for that. I don't have to work anymore. This is about creating purpose and good jobs for the future. And my aspiration for you is if we ask that question of you in 50 or 60 years' time, because you will be working a long time, you'll work longer than me because you're going to live longer, that you, when you're asked that question when you retire, you say, no, I am missing things from work because of the social connection, the purpose I had, the meaning of work, and why that was important to me. Because work is so fundamental to our lives. It's incredibly important that we therefore build human-centered workplaces. So what is good work? I like this model. This is a Japanese model. It's called Ikigai. It says the best jobs are ones that I love doing, that I'm passionate about, that I'm good at, that the world needs, and that which I can be paid for. Would you agree those are good dimensions of a good job? So we need to focus on some of these ideas much more. We're working in the United Kingdom now with the government who are trying to embed these sorts of ideas in understanding the growth of jobs in the economy. It's not just how many jobs we create, it's whether those are good jobs or not. You know about the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, right? So they're about things like the climate and many other things in society. One of the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals is also about creating more good work. More jobs that are meaningful, that are inclusive, and that give everybody opportunity. That must be a goal of society, whatever happens with technology. So then, given all of these changes, what are the things that matter? I mean, I've talked about trends in technology, how jobs are changing. What is this meaning? What are we now looking for in the workplace today? Now, it may surprise you to see at the top of the list are things like soft skills, right? Not just technical skills, but human skills. My ability to collaborate, to empathize, to be creative, to critically think. All these sorts of ideas, to work in teams, to collaborate. These are the human skills, the so-called soft skills. And these have now moved up to the top of the list of what employers are looking for. And I think this is going to be happening everywhere now, that employers are increasingly saying, I'm not just interested in your technical qualifications, I want to know whether you can collaborate, whether you are creative, whether you are prepared to take risk, whether you have compassion and emotional intelligence, can work with others. Those are the skills that we most need. There was a piece of research done in the United Kingdom recently by one of the universities, Cardiff University, and they surveyed 21 million job adverts. Now, they probably used artificial intelligence to help them, because they wanted to know what those job adverts were looking at. It's for entry-level jobs. And only 1 in 5 of those job adverts was asking about technical skills. Only 1 in 5 was asking about qualifications. The rest of them was all about the human skills, the soft skills. Also, flexible working. How many of you young people would like to be able to work flexibly in the future? All of you, I'm guessing. Yeah, all of you, right? Isn't that the aspiration of work? And yet you look at the old paradigms of work, which we've had for so long, that we have to work 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and all of that. I can't even remember where that came from, probably 100, 200 years ago. That is a paradigm of work which will change in the future, because it's ridiculous. We all travel to work at the same time. We all get stuck in traffic jams. We're all getting very stressed at work because we're working too many hours. We need to create it more flexibly. Of course, and without flexible work, we prevent other people coming into work. For example, we make it harder for women to work when they have children. We must create more flexible working. It's good for our health, it's good for our well-being, it's good for inclusion, and it's good for productivity as well. There's a lot more debate going on in the world now about maybe we should switch from a standard 5 days a week to something like 4 days a week. Would you vote for that? Yes, I'd vote for that. So, countries like Iceland and Finland and parts of the United Kingdom and companies, businesses are starting to experiment with this idea. So maybe we should try working 4 days a week. And what we need to do is we need to measure the output of people, not the input of hours, but the output. And they're finding that people can be more productive after working 4 days than they are over 5 days, because they're more rested, they're less distracted, and all these other things. And then there are other things here like transparency and harassment. These are very important issues as well. We have to create organizations and workplaces where I can trust, where I feel safe, that I'm not going to get harassed, where I'm acknowledged for my differences as much as I'm acknowledged for the things that make me the same as others. And that is a modern part of societal thinking. It's another thing that the younger generation is bringing to the world, which is to say, treat me like a person. Treat me with respect. Do not bring me into the workplace and treat me like everybody else, or put me in a box with a whole set of rules. I'm a human being. Treat me like that. So anti-harassment is really about that. It's about treating people with respect in the workplace and training managers how to do that properly and how to listen properly. So those are the issues which, this is from the World Economic Forum, that says this is what businesses are already looking for. These are the big issues that in the workplace now. And they are profoundly human issues. They're not all about how can I use more and more technology. They're about how do I make workplaces that are good for people, that treat people with respect, and also think differently about many of the paradigms of work we've had in the past. So the future is flexible. This gentleman on the right here, John Maynard Keynes, was a very famous British economist who in the 1930s said, by now, he predicted, we would be working 15-hour weeks. A lot of us are working 15-hour days, aren't we? And do you know why we're working 15-hour days? It's technology, isn't it? So we might be being paid for 35 hours a week, but we're all texting each other and emailing each other. And what's the first thing you do in the morning when you wake up? You grab your phone and start looking at texts or sending emails. What's the last thing you do at night? You're looking at your phone. What's your boss doing? Your boss is sending you emails, and then you have to respond to them. We created a world where the boundaries between work and life are getting very, very blurred. And we've got to change some of that, because it's putting a lot of stress on people. Stress is now the biggest source of absenteeism from work. And that cannot go on. So we need more flexible working, different hours of working, different schedules of working, part-time working, job sharing, all these sorts of ideas, and breaking the old paradigm of 9 to 5 working. And if you agree with that, you can start to do that in your own organizations. But we've got a long way to go. There's a lot of very fixed mindsets of people, particularly from my generation, of how work is. That it's about 9 to 5, it's about climbing a pole, it's about doing as you're told, it's about rules. And those are the paradigms that are changing. So what skills will we need? Well, I've already touched on them. It's all these sorts of things. The gentleman up on the stage before, his future, I think, is pretty secure. Would you agree? I know he's made a lot of money, but he would be in a job which is creativity. Yes, automation and AI can do a lot of the things that he did, but the creativity is coming from people, isn't it? It's coming from people. So these are the sorts of skills now that people talk about. They are often called the softer skills because they're not about technical and engineering skills. And I know many of you are technologists and engineers, and I'm not suggesting for 1 second that we don't need more of your skills. But whether you're an engineer, a biologist, or a musician, or whatever you are, whatever you're training to be, these skills are the skills which will help you get into work and get on. And these are things that we need to bring closer together to help close the gap between education and the world of work. And I know in your world, as it is in Europe and everywhere else, we've got growing gaps between education and the world of work. Because education seems to be so much about teaching people, putting them through exams, giving them qualifications, but it is not necessarily developing these skills in conscious and definable ways. And these are the skills we need. In the workplace itself, we must also develop these skills. If I come into the workplace, I need to know that the people I'm working for have got these skills as well. I need to know that my manager did not just get promoted because they're the best technician or they're the best salesperson. It's because they can also manage people effectively. And we need to reward those skills and develop those skills. But again, that's a paradigm of work we've had in the past. People get promoted typically because they're technically good or they're the best salesperson. Have you ever heard of the Peter principle of organizations? It's a well-known principle that everybody gets promoted to a level of their own incompetence. You can imagine organizations that are full of people who are beyond their level of competence. Now, what is that competence? I would say the Peter principle has changed in its form. It's not that they're technically not competent. It's often because they're not managerially competent. We haven't trained them to look after people, to manage people, and all these other things. And they haven't necessarily been focusing on building these skills. So these are the skills of the future and the things we need to understand. Diversity and inclusion, so important. It's important all over the world. Obviously, many parts of the Gulf region, more gender equality is important, but it's every kind of difference that we try to bring into the world of work. And why is that important? Well, the first thing is access to skills. We cannot fill all the gaps of the skills we need in any organization without being inclusive, without recruiting people from all sorts of different backgrounds and bringing them into our organizations. Secondly, we have known for generations that creativity does not come from having an organization made up of the same people with the same background and the same thinking. It comes from people with different backgrounds and different experience and different skill sets. That's where innovation comes from. Different ideas. And we need to celebrate that difference as a key part of work. It's also about having organizations that reflect the society and community which they are part of. And we've had too many organizations that look one particular way and are working in societies that look in very different ways. And we have to change that. So this is a very, very big agenda for us as well. It's a governmental agenda, it's a business agenda, and it's a societal agenda as well. And then finally, just thinking about other ideas, well-being as an outcome. Now, one of the things I love about Dubai is that you have a minister for happiness and a ministry for wellness. These are really, really important ideas now. You know the Global Happiness Index, right? So people are beginning to measure not just economic growth, but is this country or this society a great place to be? Are people happy? Is it good for their well-being? And I absolutely believe that one of the main outcomes that we have to focus on now for businesses and jobs and organizations and societies is well-being. This idea of physical and emotional and mental well-being and financial well-being. They are so important. And we've forgotten about a lot of these things. I mentioned at the very beginning that the professional body which I run has been around for 100 years. We have 150,000 members, HR and learning professionals around the world. 100 years ago, it started out as something called the Welfare Workers Association. It did what it said on the tin. They worried about the welfare of their workers. And in the meantime, certainly over the last 30 or 40 years, we've forgotten a lot of those things and thought that organizations are only about making money. They're about how much money do I make. Well, that's an important outcome, I'm not denying that. But what is an even more important outcome in my mind is the well-being of the people that you employ. Because if they are well, they will contribute more, they will be more productive. And we cannot go on creating workplaces that are not healthy for people, not good for people. So I applaud you for your Minister of Happiness and this focus that you have on wellness. It is one of the most important outcomes of work. And it is absolutely fundamental to our future. It's so fundamental, I can get all philosophical on you and say that the future of humanity is about well-being. Have any of you studied Aristotle? Well, Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher, said that the purpose of humanity was this idea of wellness. He called it eudaimonia. That the purpose of humanity is to create a world where people are more content and they are well. You look at all the trends of the world of work in the last 30, 40 years, and that is not what we've been creating. We've been creating a lot of very unhappy people. People don't feel they're recognized or respected, feel that they're harassed, feel that they have no progression, that they're in a low-skilled job and they don't know what their future is, or being managed by somebody who doesn't recognize them or give them any voice. That's all the things I've talked about drive this idea of well-being. So it's a really, really fundamental outcome we need to be measuring in our organizations, just as much as we're starting to measure them in society. So that's how big that one is. So in the end, I think a lot of this is going to come back to the managers. How do we train our managers? And don't you think it would be a good idea if we all walked around with a sign on our back and it said, "How good's my managing?" Because that's what we care about, right? When we talk about organizations and engagement, we've used this expression for a long time, which says that people join organizations, but they leave managers. And it's true, right? I join a great organization. I'm engaged when I join that organization because I've made that commitment to that organization. Then I get in there, and then I find that the managers, and we've got value statements on the wall, and then I get in there and I find that the managers are not living those value statements. They're not talking to me. They're not giving me voice. They're not respecting me. They're not living the values and the culture of the organization effectively. So we have got to make sure that we're training everybody, all our managers and leaders, to understand how to treat people with respect, how to coach them, how to support them, and how to do things differently. If I look at a flexible world, we've got to understand people's output, not just how many input hours they produce. This is another paradigm of work, I said, that we have been taught to have a bias towards those people who spend more hours at work than those who don't. You will see people saying, well, that person's working from home. right? Because what they're saying is, in their mind, that person's working from home. Well, they're not really working, are they? Because they're at home. Well, this is part of the flexible world of work. I don't care where I work. It should be about valuing me and my output. But we have to train the managers. So, to conclude, I think, and it's a slightly complicated slide to conclude, I suppose, but I just want to make the point overall that any organization, when you have your business and your business strategy, you must then look at, okay, what is the future workforce going to look like? What skills and capabilities are going to need? What kind of culture do I need in my business to ensure that people will be well looked after, that their well-being will be secure, which creates a productive outcome for the organization? And then finally, that yes, of course I've got an HR strategy that supports it, but we've got to make sure all of these things connect. And I talk at many, many business schools. I've been in business a long time. Business strategy has too much been about, well, this is the market, these are the products, this is the financial strategy, and then almost nothing about, yes, but what's your strategy for the organization, the people, the leadership, and the culture? Because those are the things that are going to matter in the end. Because there are only two things that we have in any business, and arguably society as well. One is money, and the other is people. Those are the only two things we have. And we've got to make sure that in the future we do a better job of managing and supporting our people, that we create a human-centered future of work, that we behave ethically and responsibly and respect people for their difference and their individuality, and that we create this outcome of well-being as a goal of the future of work. So it's great to be here to talk with you all. You are the future. You young people are the future. It is your countries like the UAE as a young country that is such a big part of the future. You live in a place with an incredible vision of the future too. And those are great things to celebrate, and there will be enormous contributions that you make to the future of the world and the future of society. I hope some of you who are studying in colleges and universities in the United Kingdom stay in the United Kingdom. Because I am a very, very big believer in immigration, in diversity in our workforce, and we need your perspectives of the world in our organizations, in our society here as well. So if you have the chance to spend time working in the United Kingdom, do that. Because it'll give you other perspectives on the world, which you can then take back to your home country. And I think your future will be a very mobile, flexible one. It'll be fantastic. But also, final thought for you. There's a very well-known business guru called Peter Drucker. We worry a lot about the future. We worry it's very uncertain. What Peter Drucker said is that the best way to predict the future is to help to create it. And you can help create the future. That is what you should do. That's what we should all do. We should not let robots rule our lives, because we can control that. So go out there and help create a positive future that is good for all of us. Shukran.